The power had been out for 6 hours when I heard the knock at my door, and I already knew it was going to be trouble because nobody in Riverside Heights, Arizona knocks on doors at 9 in the evening unless they want something. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way through the darkened hallway of my townhouse. Careful not to trip over the boxes I still hadn't unpacked from my move 3 weeks ago. The January cold snap had hit harder than anyone expected, and without electricity, my place was already dropping below 60 degrees. That space heater I'd bought yesterday was the only thing keeping my pipes from freezing, running off my portable generator that hummed away in the garage. Standing on my porch was a woman I recognized from the HOA meeting I'd been forced to attend last week. Linda Patterson, the HOA president, wearing a puffy winter coat and holding what appeared to be an official-looking clipboard even in the dark. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it probably gave her a headache, and her lips were pressed into that particular expression that screamed of someone who considered themselves very important. "Mr. Vincent Ortega, correct?" she asked, though she clearly already knew who I was. "That's me." "What can I do for you, Mrs. Patterson?" "It's about the noise violation. Your generator has been running for hours, and according to Section 12, Paragraph 4 of the HOA bylaws, generators are only permitted to run between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. I stared at her for a moment, trying to process what I was hearing. "You're joking. The power is out for the entire neighborhood. The rules don't have exceptions for power outages, Mr. Ortega. Several residents have complained about the noise. It's barely audible from the street, and everyone's houses are getting cold. I'm sure people would rather hear a generator than deal with frozen pipes." Linda's expression hardened. "The rules are the rules. I'm going to have to ask you to shut it down immediately, or I'll be forced to issue a fine of $500. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd moved to Riverside Heights specifically because it seemed like a quiet, reasonable community on the outskirts of Phoenix. The townhouses were affordable, the neighborhood was clean, and my sister Emily had recommended it when I'd told her I was relocating for my new job at the architectural firm downtown. She lived about 20 minutes away with her husband Marcus and their 2 kids, and I'd been looking forward to being closer to family again after years of living in Seattle. "Look, Mrs. Patterson, I understand there are rules, but this seems like a situation where common sense should apply. It's going to drop below freezing tonight. Then I suggest you find alternative heating methods that don't violate community noise ordinances. Good evening, Mr. Ortega." She turned and walked away before I could respond, her flashlight beam bouncing as she headed back toward her own townhouse 3 buildings down. I stood there in the cold for a minute, then went back inside and checked my space heater. The little ceramic unit was chugging away, pushing warm air into my living room. I'd paid almost $200 for it at the hardware store, along with the generator, after the weather forecast predicted this cold snap. I texted my sister Emily. "Just met the HOA president. She's something else." Her response came back quickly. "Linda, yeah, she's intense. What happened? Wants me to shut off my generator during a power outage because of noise violations. Are you serious? That's insane. Want me to call her?" "No, it's fine. I'll deal with it." But I didn't shut off the generator. I figured Linda would complain, maybe send me a formal warning, and we'd hash it out at the next HOA meeting. I'd pay a fine if I had to. Frozen pipes would cost way more than $500 to fix. I settled onto my couch with a book and my flashlight, wrapped in a blanket, grateful for the warmth from the space heater. Around 11, I heard the generator sputter and die. I went to check on it, thinking maybe I'd run out of gas, but when I opened the garage door, I found the generator switched off. That was strange because I definitely hadn't touched it. I started it back up and went inside, but my unease was growing. 20 minutes later, I heard sounds coming from my garage. I grabbed my flashlight and phone, ready to call the police if someone was trying to steal my generator, and rushed out there. The garage door was open, and Linda Patterson was standing next to my generator with her hand on the switch. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. She jumped, clearly not expecting me to catch her. "Mr. Ortega, you were warned about the noise violation, so you're trespassing in my garage. That's illegal. I have the authority as HOA president to enforce community rules." "You absolutely do not have the authority to enter my property without permission. Leave now, or I'm calling the police." Linda's face flushed red even in the dim light. "You're making a very big mistake. The HOA can make your life extremely difficult, Mr. Ortega. I suggest you learn to follow the rules. Get off my property." She left, but not before giving me a look that promised retribution. I closed and locked the garage door, then went back inside, my heart pounding. This woman was unhinged. I texted Emily again, telling her what had just happened. Her response was immediate. "That's trespassing. Do you want Marcus to talk to her? He knows her husband from the golf club. Let me handle it for now, but if she tries anything else, I might take you up on that." I managed to get a few hours of sleep, though I kept waking up to check that the generator was still running. Around 4 in the morning, I heard it die again. This time, when I went to investigate, I found the garage door still locked from the inside. The generator had simply run out of gas. I refilled it from my gas can and got it started again, but I was exhausted and frustrated. The space heater had kept my living room at a decent temperature, but the rest of the house was freezing. I could see my breath in the kitchen. The power came back on around 6 a.m., and I'd never been so grateful to hear the hum of my refrigerator starting up. I cranked the thermostat and collapsed into bed for a few more hours of sleep before I had to be at work. When I woke up around 9, I made coffee and checked my email. There was already a message from the Riverside Heights HOA with a formal notice of violation and a $500 fine for running a generator outside permitted hours. There was also a second fine for $500 for aggressive behavior toward an HOA board member. I called Emily immediately. "They can't fine you for defending your property," she said when I explained the situation. "That's ridiculous." "Well, they did, and I'm sure if I don't pay, they'll add more fines or put a lien on my property or something. Let me talk to Marcus. His law firm doesn't handle HOA stuff, but he'll know someone who does. I don't want to make a huge thing out of this. I just moved here. Vincent, this woman trespassed in your garage. That's not okay, and these fines are bogus. You need to fight this." She was right, but I was tired and didn't want to start my new life in Arizona with a legal battle. I decided to go to the HOA office that afternoon and try to talk to Linda rationally, adult to adult. The HOA office was located in the community center, a small building near the neighborhood entrance that also housed a gym and a pool. Linda was there when I arrived, sitting behind a desk with another woman I didn't recognize. "Mr. Ortega," Linda said coolly. "I assume you're here about your fines. I'm here to discuss what I think is an unreasonable application of the rules during an emergency situation." There was no emergency. The power company was working on restoration. People could have had pipes freeze. Some residents might have medical equipment that needs power. Those residents would have backup systems in place. The noise from your generator was disturbing the peace. The other woman, who introduced herself as Susan Walsh, the HOA secretary, chimed in. "We had 3 complaints about the noise, Mr. Ortega." "From who?" "That information is confidential," Linda said. Of course it is. Look, I'm not trying to be a difficult resident. I just think these fines are excessive for the situation. And Mrs. Patterson, you entered my garage without permission. That's trespassing. Linda's expression turned icy. I was enforcing HOA regulations. As president, I have the right to inspect properties for violations. Not without notice and not without the owner present. I checked the bylaws this morning. That seemed to catch her off guard, but she recovered quickly. Perhaps you should have read the bylaws before you violated them. The fines stand. You have 30 days to pay. I left the office feeling like I'd just made things worse. Emily called me that evening with the name of an attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. But when I called him, he told me that fighting HOA fines often cost more than just paying them, unless there was a clear case of harassment or discrimination. Keep documentation of everything, he advised. If this escalates into a pattern of harassment, we can build a case. I paid the $1,000 in fines, bitter about it but not wanting to deal with the hassle. For the next 2 weeks, I kept my head down, followed every rule I could find in the massive HOA handbook, and tried to avoid Linda Patterson. Then February arrived with another cold snap, this one even worse than the first. The power company sent out warnings about rolling blackouts to conserve energy. I prepared by making sure my generator was fueled and ready, but I didn't run it, not wanting to give Linda any ammunition. The blackout hit on a Friday evening. I'd just gotten home from work when everything went dark. I lit some candles and wrapped myself in blankets, determined to tough it out without the generator. The temperature in my townhouse dropped steadily. By 10 p.m. it was 50 degrees inside. By midnight it was 45. I finally gave in and went to get my space heater from the closet where I'd stored it, but when I opened the closet it wasn't there. I searched my entire townhouse, thinking maybe I'd put it somewhere else and forgotten. Nothing. The space heater was gone. That's when I remembered. 3 days ago, there had been an emergency inspection notice slipped under my door. The HOA was conducting inspections for safety violations and would be entering units between certain hours. I'd been at work during those hours. I'd thought it was odd but not unusual enough to take time off work. I grabbed my phone and called the HOA emergency number, which went straight to voicemail. I called Linda Patterson's personal cell, which she'd included in the inspection notice. She answered on the 4th ring. "Mr. Ortega, do you know what time it is? Did you take my space heater during the inspection?" There was a pause. During our safety inspection, we confiscated several items that violated fire safety codes. Space heaters are not permitted in Riverside Heights units. You're kidding me. You took my heater. It's clearly stated in Section 18 of the bylaws. No portable heating devices except those approved by the board. It's freezing in here, and the power is out. That's not the HOA's problem, Mr. Ortega. Perhaps if you'd read the bylaws more carefully, you'd have known better than to purchase an unauthorized heating device. You can retrieve it from the HOA office on Monday during business hours, and you'll be assessed a fine for the violation. She hung up. I sat in my dark, freezing townhouse, absolutely furious. This had crossed a line from petty enforcement to something that felt deliberately malicious. I called Emily. She did what? Emily's voice was sharp with anger. Took my space heater. Says they're not allowed. Vincent, this is insane. You need to do something about this. Like what? She's technically enforcing the rules, apparently. I don't care. This is harassment. She's targeting you because you stood up to her. I'll deal with it Monday. Can I borrow a heater from you, of course? Marcus and I will bring one over right now. It's almost 1 in the morning. I don't care. We're coming. 40 minutes later, my sister showed up with her husband Marcus, a tall man with dark hair who worked as a corporate attorney. They brought 2 space heaters, several blankets, and a thermos of hot coffee. "This is really unnecessary," I said, grateful but embarrassed. "I would have survived." "Linda Patterson is out of control," Marcus said, setting up one of the heaters. "She's been a problem for years, but the HOA board keeps voting her back in because she's the only one willing to do it. Everyone else is too busy or doesn't want the headache." "Well, she's definitely giving me a headache." Emily hugged me. "You should have called us sooner. You don't have to deal with this alone." They stayed for an hour, making sure I was warm and comfortable before heading home. I felt better knowing they had my back, but I was still angry about the entire situation. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and went to the HOA office as soon as it opened at 9. Linda was there, along with Susan Walsh and a man I'd seen at the one board meeting I'd attended, Carl Thompson, the HOA treasurer. "I'm here for my space heater," I said. Linda pulled out a form. "You'll need to sign this acknowledgement of the violation and pay the fine of $250. "I'm not paying another fine. You entered my home without proper notice and took my property. We provided 48 hours notice as required by the bylaws. The notice was slipped under my door 3 days before the inspection. I had no opportunity to be present or to contest anything." "The bylaws don't require your presence, Mr. Ortega." Carl cleared his throat. "Linda, maybe we should consider the circumstances. It is pretty cold and space heaters are common." Linda shot him a look that could have frozen water. "The rules exist for everyone's safety, Carl. We can't make exceptions." I was about to argue further when my phone rang. It was Emily. "I need to take this," I said and stepped outside. "Hey, Marcus found something interesting," Emily said. "He had a paralegal pull the HOA bylaws and meeting minutes for the past 5 years. That space heater rule. It was never officially voted on by the homeowners. Linda just added it to the handbook on her own." "Are you serious?" "Completely. Marcus says that means the rule isn't enforceable. Any rule changes require a vote by the general membership." "Can you send me the documentation?" "Already in your email." I went back inside with my phone and pulled up the email Marcus had sent, which included scanned copies of the HOA meeting minutes and the original bylaws. "Mrs. Patterson, I'd like to know when the space heater prohibition was voted on by the general membership." Linda's expression barely changed. "That information is in the records." "Actually, it's not. According to the meeting minutes from the past 5 years, no such vote ever took place, which means you added this rule without proper authorization." Susan and Carl both looked at Linda with surprise. "Linda, is that true?" Carl asked. "I have the authority to update the handbook for safety issues." "No, you don't," I said. "According to the actual bylaws, any rule affecting property use requires a membership vote, so not only is the fine invalid, but you had no right to confiscate my property." Linda's face was turning red. "You need to leave now, Mr. Ortega. Not without my space heater. It's been disposed of." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You what?" "Unauthorized items are disposed of after confiscation. It's standard procedure." "You threw away my $200 space heater because of a rule you made up. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, or I'll call the police for trespassing." "Call them, please." "I'd love to explain to the police how you've been harassing me, trespassing on my property, and stealing my belongings." Linda pulled out her phone, but Carl stood up. "Linda, stop. This has gone too far. Mr. Ortega will reimburse you for the space heater." "Linda, we need to have an emergency board meeting." "I'm the president of this board, Carl, and I'm the treasurer, and we're not paying legal fees because you're on a power trip. Mr. Ortega, I apologize. We'll cut you a check today." I wanted to push harder, to demand Linda be removed or face consequences, but Carl seemed genuinely apologetic, and I was tired of fighting. "I want $200 for the heater and all my fines refunded." "That's $1,250 total," Carl said, checking his computer. "I'll have the check ready this afternoon." Linda looked like she wanted to explode, but she stayed silent. I left the office feeling like I'd won a small victory, but something told me this wasn't over. I was right. Over the next 3 weeks, I received violation notices for everything imaginable. My trash can was out 15 minutes past the allowed time. My car was parked 3 inches over my designated space line. There were reports of loud music from my unit, even though I'd been at work during the supposed violations. Each notice came with a fine ranging from $50 to $200. I documented everything, took photos, kept records of where I was and when. Emily and Marcus helped me respond to each violation with evidence proving they were either false or absurdly petty. But it was exhausting and stressful, and it was affecting my work. My boss had noticed I seemed distracted, and I'd had to explain the situation to him. "That's why I rent," he'd said sympathetically. "HOAs are a nightmare." The final straw came on a Tuesday evening in late February. I came home from work to find a bright orange notice taped to my door. "Foreclosure warning," it read in large letters. According to the notice, I had accumulated over $5,000 in unpaid fines and fees, and the HOA was beginning foreclosure proceedings on my property. I immediately called Marcus, who looked over the documentation that night at his and Emily's house. "This is completely illegitimate," he said, spreading papers across his dining room table. "Half these fines are for violations that aren't even in the bylaws, and they can't foreclose this quickly anyway. There's a legal process that takes months." "So what do?" we fight back. "Officially, I'm going to recommend someone who specializes in these cases, and we're going to go after Linda Patterson and the HOA board for harassment." Emily was pacing in the kitchen. "This is insane. She's trying to force you out of your home. I don't understand why she's targeting me so much. I've barely interacted with her." "Because you stood up to her," Marcus said. "Bullies don't like it when people fight back." The attorney Marcus recommended was named Patricia Vance, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd been fighting HOA abuse cases for 20 years. She took one look at my documentation and smiled. "This is one of the clearest cases of HOA harassment I've seen," she said at our meeting. "We can definitely fight this, and we have a good chance of not only getting the fines dismissed, but also getting damages for the stress and harassment you've endured." "How long will it take?" "Could be several months. HOA cases move slowly. But in the meantime, I'll file an injunction to stop any foreclosure proceedings and send a cease and desist letter to the board." Things seemed to be moving in the right direction until the morning of March 3rd, when I woke up to find my car had been towed from my designated parking space. According to the notice left in the spot, the vehicle had been in violation of parking regulations and was taken to an impound lot 40 minutes away. I called Patricia immediately. "This is getting ridiculous," she said, "but it's also giving us more ammunition. Document everything and get your car back. Save all the receipts." The impound fee was $350. When I asked what violation had warranted the tow, they said the HOA had reported the vehicle as abandoned. My car that I drove every single day and had moved just that morning before work. I was done being nice about this. That evening, I went to Emily's house and found her in a mood I rarely saw from my usually calm sister. She was furious. "I called Linda myself today," Emily said. "I told her she needed to stop harassing you or there would be consequences." "What did she say?" She said I should mind my own business and hung up on me. Can you believe that? She hung up on me. Marcus came in from his study. I spoke with Patricia. She's filing a formal complaint tomorrow, and she's recommending we also file a personal restraining order against Linda. Will that work? It'll make a statement, and it'll create a legal record that can help us later. Emily was still pacing. You know what? I should just tell Marcus to call my brother. What brother? I'm your brother. She stopped and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. My other brother. Well, stepbrother. I forgot you don't know about Marcus's brother, Elijah. Your husband has a brother I've never met. Marcus sighed. Half-brother technically, different mothers. He's a lot older than me and we weren't close growing up. But yeah, Elijah Williams. He's the chief of police here in Phoenix. I stared at them. Are you serious right now? I don't like using that connection, Marcus said. Elijah and I have a complicated relationship, and I don't want him to think I only call when I need something. But this is a legitimate legal issue, Emily said. Linda has been trespassing, stealing property, filing false reports. Those are actual crimes. Let's see how the legal route goes first, I said, though the knowledge that my brother-in-law was connected to the police chief was definitely comforting. I don't want to escalate unless we have to. But of course, things escalated. The following week, I received a notice that the HOA was implementing emergency repairs to my townhouse due to structural concerns, and that I needed to vacate the property for 72 hours starting that Friday. The notice gave me 3 days' warning. Patricia immediately filed an objection, arguing that the HOA had provided no evidence of structural problems and hadn't followed proper procedure for emergency repairs. But the HOA had lined up a contractor and insisted the work was necessary. On Thursday evening, I came home to find Linda Patterson standing outside my townhouse with a contractor and another board member I'd never met. Mr. Ortega, we'll need access to your property tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., Linda said. My attorney has filed an objection to this repair order. Your objection was noted, but the board voted to proceed. We have concerns about foundation issues that could affect the entire building. Then I want to be present during the inspection and repairs. That's not possible. Insurance liability. Something about this felt wrong. I want documentation of these supposed foundation issues. Linda handed me a folder. Inside was a single-page report from a company I'd never heard of, claiming there were cracks in the foundation that needed immediate attention. The report was dated 2 days ago and had no photos or detailed findings. This is fake, I said. Excuse me. This is a fake report. You're making this up to get into my property. Linda's expression turned cold. Mr. Ortega, I understand you're upset about the rules enforcement, but making false accusations is serious. We're trying to maintain the structural integrity of these buildings. Then you won't mind if I have my own inspector come look at it first. We don't have time for that. The work begins tomorrow. I called Patricia right there on my doorstep. She spoke with Linda and managed to negotiate a 48-hour delay, which would give us time to get our own inspector out to verify the claims. The inspector, a retired civil engineer named Bob Chen, came out Saturday morning and spent 2 hours examining my townhouse's foundation and structure. His conclusion was definitive. There were no structural issues, no foundation cracks, and no reason for emergency repairs. Whoever wrote this report either never looked at the property or deliberately lied, Bob told me. This foundation is solid. The building is only 6 years old. Patricia took Bob's report and filed an emergency motion with the court to block the HOA from entering my property. She also filed a formal complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, which oversees HOA regulations in the state. That's when Linda made her biggest mistake. On Sunday evening, while I was at Emily and Marcus's house for dinner, Linda used her master key to enter my townhouse. I'd installed a security camera after the space heater incident, and it caught everything. Linda spent 40 minutes in my home, going through my things, opening drawers and cabinets. She took several items, including my laptop, some documents from my desk, and for some reason, my coffee maker. The security system sent alerts to my phone, and I watched in real time as she ransacked my place. I immediately called 911. "This is an active burglary," I told the dispatcher. "The person is still inside my home." Marcus overheard and grabbed his phone. "I'm calling Elijah." This is beyond the legal system now. Within 15 minutes, 3 Phoenix police cars arrived at my townhouse complex. Officers found Linda still inside my unit. She tried to explain that she was the HOA president and had the right to enter for inspections, but the officers weren't buying it. "Sir, do you want to press charges?" one of the officers asked me when I arrived back at my townhouse. "Absolutely." "Madam, you're under arrest for burglary and trespassing," the officer told Linda. Her face went pale. "This is a mistake. I'm the HOA president." "Call the board. They'll verify I have authorization." "HOA authorization doesn't override property rights and criminal law," the officer said, handcuffing her. "You have the right to remain silent." They read Linda her rights and put her in the back of a patrol car. The other residents had come out to watch, and I could hear the whispers and murmurs. Susan Walsh appeared, looking shocked. "What's happening?" she asked. "Linda broke into my townhouse and stole my property," I said. "It's all on camera." "Oh my God, Vincent, I'm so sorry." I had no idea things had gotten this bad. A man in plain clothes arrived about 20 minutes later, speaking with the uniformed officers. He was in his late 50s, with gray hair and a commanding presence. He came over to where Marcus and Emily were standing with me. "Marcus," he said, shaking my brother-in-law's hand. "Been a while." "Thanks for coming out, Elijah. This is my wife Emily and her brother Vincent." Police Chief Elijah Williams shook my hand. "I understand you've been having trouble with your HOA president. That's putting it mildly. I've reviewed the security footage your attorney sent over. That's pretty clear-cut burglary. We'll be charging Mrs. Patterson. Given the pattern of harassment, we'll also be looking into whether there are additional charges warranted. The HOA board needs to know that this behavior was not authorized," Susan Walsh said, having overheard. "Linda has been acting on her own for months. We thought she was just being strict about enforcement, but this..." She gestured at the police cars. Over the next few hours, I gave a statement to the police, provided copies of all my documentation of Linda's harassment, and retrieved my stolen items from where the police had collected them as evidence. They'd be returned to me after they were logged. Linda was taken to the station and booked. According to Chief Williams, she'd likely be released on bail that night, but she'd be facing serious charges. "I want you to know that we take property crimes seriously," the chief told me before he left. "And the fact that she abused her position as HOA president makes this worse. The DA will be very interested in this case." Emily hugged me after the police finally left. "Are you okay?" "I think so. This is just so surreal." "You should stay with us tonight," Marcus said. "Your place is technically a crime scene right now, and you shouldn't be alone after all this." I took him up on the offer. That night, lying in their guest room, I finally let myself process everything that had happened over the past 2 months. It had been exhausting and stressful, and part of me wished I'd never moved to Riverside Heights. But another part of me was glad I'd fought back. Linda had been bullying residents for years, apparently, and nobody had stood up to her with real consequences. The next morning, Marcus made breakfast while Emily filled me in on what she'd learned from the neighborhood's social media pages. "You're a hero in the community," she said, showing me her phone. "Everyone is talking about how Linda finally got what she deserved. Apparently she's been terrorizing people for years. One couple moved out because of her harassment. I just wanted to live quietly in my townhouse." Well, you've started a revolution instead. Over the next few weeks, things moved quickly. Linda was formally charged with burglary in the second degree, theft, and criminal trespass. The DA's office also started investigating whether she'd embezzled HOA funds, as some irregularities had been discovered during the review of the board's finances. The HOA held an emergency election, and Linda was removed from the board by a unanimous vote of the residents. Susan Walsh was elected as the new president, and one of her first acts was to void all the fines Linda had issued against me. The board also voted to reimburse me for my legal fees, the impound charges, and the space heater. "We're also implementing new oversight procedures," Susan told me at a community meeting in April. "No single board member will have master keys to resident units, and all inspections will require proper notice and the option for the homeowner to be present. We're also reviewing all the rules Linda added to the handbook without proper votes." Carl Thompson, who remained as treasurer, apologized personally. "I should have stopped her sooner. I knew she was too aggressive, but I didn't want the conflict. That was wrong of me." Linda's trial was set for August. Patricia Vance also filed a civil suit against Linda personally, and the HOA board for the harassment I'd endured, seeking damages and legal fees. The HOA's insurance company settled quickly, offering $50,000 and a formal apology. "You could probably get more if we went to trial," Patricia said, "but trials are expensive and time-consuming. I'll take the settlement. I'm ready to move on." In June, something unexpected happened. Linda's attorney reached out to Patricia with a plea deal offer. If I agreed not to pursue maximum penalties, Linda would plead guilty to reduced charges, agree to pay restitution, and resign from all HOA positions permanently, not just in Riverside Heights but anywhere in Arizona. She's also being required to attend anger management and psychological evaluation as part of the deal, Patricia explained. The DA thinks that's appropriate given the obsessive nature of her harassment. What would her sentence be? Probably probation, community service, and the restitution payments. She'd have a criminal record, which matters for someone who held herself up as a pillar of the community. I agreed to the deal. I didn't want Linda to go to prison necessarily. I just wanted her to stop and to face real consequences for her actions. The guilty plea accomplished that. The formal hearing was in July. Linda stood before the judge and pleaded guilty to criminal trespass and theft, with the burglary charge being reduced. She was sentenced to 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered to pay me $12,000 in restitution for the stress, harassment, and expenses she'd caused. When she left the courtroom, she didn't look at me. Her husband, a quiet man I'd seen once or twice, looked embarrassed and exhausted. I almost felt sorry for him. Emily met me outside the courthouse. "How do you feel?" "Relieved. Ready to actually enjoy my home now." "Good. Because Marcus and I have been thinking. We want to have a proper housewarming party for you. You never got to have one because of all this drama. You don't have to do that. We want to. Besides, the whole neighborhood wants to thank you. You freed them from HOA tyranny." The party was the following Saturday, and it was actually fun. My neighbors from Riverside Heights came, people I'd barely spoken to during the whole ordeal. They shared their own stories of Linda's harassment, minor violations that had resulted in huge fines, intimidation tactics, and the general atmosphere of fear she'd created. One time she fined me because my son's bike was visible from the street in my garage, one neighbor told me. She said it was an eyesore. It was a kid's bike. She tried to make me remove my garden gnomes, another resident said they violated the decorating standards. They were 6-inch tall gnomes. Susan Walsh came to the party too. The board is working on a complete revision of the bylaws, she told me. We're going to have a community vote on all the rules, make sure everything is reasonable and actually voted on properly. And we're implementing term limits for board positions. No more HOA presidents for life. That sounds great. We also wanted to offer you a position on the board if you're interested. We could use someone who's not afraid to stand up for what's right. I considered it but declined. I appreciate the offer, but I think I've had enough HOA drama for one lifetime. I just want to be a normal resident who pays his dues and doesn't worry about violation notices. She laughed. Fair enough, but the offer stands if you change your mind. Chief Williams stopped by briefly, bringing a bottle of wine. Thought I'd check in and see how you're settling in, he said. Marcus tells me things are better now. Much better. Thank you for taking the situation seriously. It's my job. But I'll admit, when Marcus called me that night, I was skeptical about how bad it could really be. Then I saw the security footage and read through the documentation. That woman had serious issues. Is it common for HOAs to get that out of control? More common than you'd think. Power corrupts, even small amounts of it. We get calls about HOA disputes all the time, though usually not to the level of actual criminal behavior. Emily joined us with Marcus. Are you talking shop? No work talk at the party. Actually, I was just leaving, the chief said. You folks enjoy your evening. Vincent, welcome to Arizona. Hope it treats you better from here on out. After he left, I looked around at the gathering. My sister and her husband, my new neighbors, people who'd become friendly after everything that happened. It wasn't the quiet, simple move I'd planned when I left Seattle, but maybe it was better. I'd found my spine again, stood up for myself when it mattered, and helped other people in the process. You look contemplative, Emily said, just thinking about how weird the last few months have been. Are you happy you moved here? Honestly, I smiled. Yeah, I am. Even with all the drama, it's good to be close to family again. Good, because we're not letting you leave now. You're stuck with us. The rest of the summer passed quietly, which was exactly what I needed. I settled into my job, made friends with my neighbors, and actually enjoyed living in my townhouse. The new HOA board was efficient and reasonable, handling actual issues without the power trips and harassment. In September, I received my first restitution payment from Linda. It was a money order for $1,000, the first of 12 monthly payments. Patricia had structured it so that Linda's accountability would be ongoing, a regular reminder of the consequences of her actions. I deposited the check and didn't think much about it until the next month, when the second payment came with a note. It was handwritten, and I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity got the better of me. Mr. Ortega, it read. I know an apology cannot undo the harm I caused you. I've spent these months in therapy working through why I behaved the way I did. My therapist says I used the HOA position to feel important and in control because other parts of my life felt chaotic. That's not an excuse, just an explanation. I'm sorry for what I put you through. I hope you're able to enjoy your home now, Linda Patterson. I showed the note to Emily when she came over for dinner that week. You believe she's sincere? She asked. I don't know. Maybe. Does it matter? I guess not, as long as she leaves you alone. I think she will. She moved, according to Susan. She and her husband bought a house in Scottsdale. No HOA. Emily laughed. Probably smart. That winter, Arizona had another cold snap, though not as severe as the previous year. I ran my space heater without any concerns, and when the power flickered one evening, I had my generator ready in the garage. No one complained. No one trespassed. No violation notices appeared on my door. It was boring and normal and exactly what I wanted. One evening in December, almost a year after that first knock on my door from Linda Patterson, I hosted a small holiday gathering at my townhouse. Emily and Marcus came with their kids. Susan Walsh stopped by with her husband. A few neighbors from my building joined us. We ate cookies, drank hot chocolate, and talked about normal things. Holiday plans, work gossip, the upcoming community events the HOA was planning. Someone mentioned that the neighborhood Christmas light display was much better this year now that the decoration rules had been relaxed. "Remember when Linda tried to ban colored lights?" one neighbor said. "Said only white lights were acceptable." "She banned my inflatable Santa," another added. "Well, those things are pretty tacky," Emily joked, and everyone laughed. Later, after most people had left and Emily was helping me clean up, she said, "You seem happy. Really happy." "I am. This whole thing, as terrible as it was, taught me something." "What's that?" "That I can stand up for myself. That fighting back against bullies is worth it, even when it's exhausting. And that having family nearby who has your back makes everything better." She hugged me. "We'll always have your back. Even if it means my husband has to call his estranged half-brother who happens to run the police department. Especially then." As I locked the door after Emily and Marcus left, I looked around my townhouse. The space heater hummed quietly in the corner. My coffee maker, returned from evidence, sat on the kitchen counter. Everything was as it should be, peaceful and mine. The next morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. It was the HOA newsletter, now professionally done by Susan and the Reformed Board. Inside was an article about the new community guidelines, an invitation to the next board meeting, and a small note thanking all residents for making Riverside Heights a better place to live. At the bottom, someone had written in pen, "Especially you, Vincent. Thank you." I smiled and went back inside to make coffee. Outside, the Arizona sun was rising over the neighborhood, promising another beautiful day. No violation notices, no harassment, no drama, just a normal Tuesday in my home, exactly as it should be. The months continued to pass without incident. I got promoted at work in the spring, a recognition of the good projects I'd been completing now that I wasn't constantly distracted by HOA battles. My boss mentioned that I seemed more confident, more willing to stand up for my design ideas in client meetings. "Whatever changed in the past year, keep it up," he told me. I thought about telling him the whole story but decided against it. Some things were better left as internal victories. The neighborhood changed too, in subtle ways. More people attended HOA meetings now, engaged and interested rather than fearful. The board implemented a suggestion box and actually acted on reasonable ideas. The playground equipment got updated. The community pool was resurfaced. These were the things an HOA should be doing, not harassing residents over imaginary violations. Susan Walsh proved to be an excellent president, organized and fair without being tyrannical. She'd call me occasionally to run ideas past me, respecting my experience with the system even though I'd declined to join the board. "We're thinking about starting a community garden," she told me one day. "Think people would be interested? Probably. Linda would have hated it. Good. Then I'm definitely doing it." In June, I ran into Linda's ex-husband at a home improvement store. He recognized me and after a moment of awkward hesitation came over. "Vincent, right?" he said. "That's me. I'm David Patterson. Linda's ex-husband, actually. We divorced in January. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. It was necessary. I want to apologize for what she put you through. I tried to talk to her about the HOA stuff, but she wouldn't listen. She was obsessed. It's not your fault. Still, you didn't deserve that. For what it's worth, the therapy seems to be helping her. She's working as a receptionist at a dental office now, nothing with any authority over people. It's better for everyone. I hope she's doing better. She is. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. Take care. He walked away, and I felt an unexpected sense of closure. Linda hadn't been evil, just damaged and given too much power. The system had failed by allowing one person so much control with so little oversight. At least Riverside Heights had fixed that problem. That summer, I started dating someone I met through work, an interior designer named Rachel who thought my HOA story was both horrifying and hilarious. "You should write a book," she said over dinner one night. "People would eat that up. I don't think I want to relive it in that much detail." Fair. But seriously, you handled it well. A lot of people would have just moved away. I thought about it. What made you stay and fight? I considered the question. Pride, I guess, and stubbornness. I didn't want her to win. Plus, my sister would have killed me if I left Arizona right after moving here. Rachel laughed. Family is important. Yeah, it really is. By the time fall arrived again, marking a full year since Linda's arrest and guilty plea, life had fully normalized. The restitution payments came regularly. Linda never contacted me beyond that one note, and Riverside Heights had become the peaceful community I'd hoped for when I first moved in. One Saturday in October, the neighborhood held its annual fall festival. There were bounce houses for kids, food trucks, and a live band. Emily and Marcus brought their kids, and Rachel came with me. We walked around, eating overpriced festival food and watching children run around with painted faces. "This is nice," Rachel said. "Your neighborhood seems great." "It is now. You should have seen it a year ago. I've heard the stories multiple times. Sorry, I probably talk about it too much. No, it's fine. It's part of your story. The time you took on a corrupt HOA president and won. I had a lot of help. Sure, but you started it. You stood up when others wouldn't." Chief Williams appeared out of uniform and with a woman I assumed was his wife. He waved at Marcus and they came over. "Vincent, good to see you," the chief said. "I hear things are going well in the neighborhood. Much better than last year. I'm glad." That Patterson case became a training example at the department, actually. We use it to teach officers about the line between civil disputes and criminal behavior. Really? Absolutely. It's a perfect example of how abuse of authority, even in a civilian context, can cross into criminal territory, and how taking victim reports seriously can prevent escalation. We chatted for a few more minutes before they moved on to get food. Rachel looked at me with raised eyebrows. "The police chief uses your case as a training example, apparently. You're kind of a big deal." "I'm really not. I just wanted my space heater back." She kissed my cheek. "And you got so much more. Justice, vindication, a better community. You should be proud." I was proud, I realized. Not in a boastful way, but in a quiet satisfaction that I'd done the right thing even when it was difficult. That I'd stood up to a bully and helped others in the process. As the sun set on the fall festival and the band played classic rock covers, I looked around at my neighborhood. These were good people, living their lives, enjoying a community event without fear of violation notices or harassment. This was what an HOA should be, a force for bringing people together and maintaining shared spaces, not a weapon for petty tyrants. Emily came up with her youngest, my nephew Tyler, who was wearing a vampire cape and carrying a balloon. "Uncle Vincent, did you see the bounce house? It's shaped like a castle." "I did see that. Pretty cool, huh? Mom says we can stay until the fireworks. Will you watch them with us?" "Of course, buddy." As Tyler ran off to the bounce house again, Emily stood beside me. "You've come a long way from that guy who showed up at my house freezing and frustrated. It's been quite a journey. I'm proud of you, not just for fighting Linda, but for building a life here, for staying. Thanks for having my back through all of it. I couldn't have done it without you and Marcus. That's what family does." The fireworks started around 8, bright bursts of color against the dark Arizona sky. Rachel held my hand, Tyler sat on my shoulders for a better view, and Emily and Marcus stood close by. In that moment, everything felt right. The struggle had been worth it. After the festival ended and we'd said our goodbyes, Rachel and I walked back to my townhouse. The streets were quiet now, lit by decorative street lamps and the occasional porch light. "You know what's funny?" I said. "I almost didn't buy here. I looked at a house in Temp 2, but it was a bit more expensive." "Sliding doors," Rachel said. "If you'd bought that other house, we never would have met." "True. And Linda Patterson would probably still be terrorizing people." "So it all worked out." "I guess it did." Inside my townhouse, I made us tea and we sat on the couch enjoying the quiet. This space that had been a battleground was now simply home. The space heater sat in the closet, ready for winter but not needed tonight. My laptop was on the desk where it belonged. The coffee maker would brew my morning cup tomorrow, same as every day, normal, boring, perfect. Rachel stayed over that night, and in the morning we made breakfast together. Through the kitchen window, I could see my neighbors going about their Sunday routines. Someone was washing their car, a couple walked their dog, kids rode bikes in the street. This was the life I'd moved to Arizona for, the quiet contentment of a home in a community that functioned the way it should. It had taken a fight to get here, but I'd won. The last restitution payment from Linda arrived in September, a full year of monthly reminders that actions have consequences. There was no note this time, just the money order. I deposited it and used the funds to buy a new grill for my patio, something I'd been wanting for a while. The first time I used it, I invited the neighbors from my building over for a cookout. We ate burgers and talked about nothing important, just enjoying the warm evening and good company. Susan Walsh mentioned that membership in the HOA had actually increased, with people wanting to buy into Riverside Heights because of its reputation for good management. "You're partly responsible for that," she told me. "Word got around about how we handled the Linda situation and reformed the board. People want to live somewhere with accountability. I just wanted to not freeze to death in a power outage, and you ended up transforming a whole community." "That's not nothing, Vincent." Maybe she was right. Maybe my stubborn refusal to be pushed around had created ripples that extended beyond just my personal situation. If so, that was a nice bonus on top of reclaiming my peace. As fall turned to winter and the holidays approached again, I reflected on everything that had happened since I'd moved to Arizona. The job was going great. My relationship with Rachel was developing into something serious. I was close with Emily and her family. I had friendly neighbors and a well-functioning HOA. Life was good. On Christmas Eve, Emily hosted dinner at her house. The whole family was there, including Chief Williams and his wife. It had become a tradition, apparently, this merging of Emily and Marcus's families for the holidays. "To Vincent," Marcus said, raising a glass, "for surviving HOA hell and coming out stronger on the other side." "To Vincent," everyone echoed. I smiled and raised my own glass. To family, to justice, and to never underestimating the importance of a good space heater. They laughed and we drank, and the evening continued with warmth and joy. Later, helping Emily with dishes, she said, "Do you ever think about Linda? Wonder how she's doing? Sometimes. I hope she's okay. I hope she learned something." That's generous of you. I'm not angry anymore. She faced consequences, I got justice, and everyone moved on. Staying angry would just hurt me at this point. When did you get so wise? Probably around the time an HOA president stole my space heater and I had to learn to fight back. Emily hugged me, soapy hands and all. I'm really glad you moved here. Even with all the drama, having you close has been wonderful. For me too. Driving home that night with Rachel in the passenger seat, Christmas lights twinkling on houses throughout the Phoenix suburbs, I felt a profound sense of contentment. The year that had started with cold, darkness, and conflict had ended with warmth, light, and peace. "What are you thinking about?" Rachel asked. "How sometimes the worst situations lead to the best outcomes. If Linda hadn't been such a nightmare, I might never have stood up for myself. I might never have gotten to know my neighbors. The HOA would still be dysfunctional. Silver linings." Exactly. We pulled into Riverside Heights, past the well-maintained entrance with its seasonal decorations, past the community center where the Reformed Board held its meetings, to my townhouse with its welcoming porch light, home. Not just a place to live, but truly home. Hard won, well earned, and finally, peacefully mine. The story of HOA Karen who stole my space heater during an outage had become the story of how I found my voice, my community, and my place in the world. And if someone in the future asked me about that year, about Linda Patterson and the battle for Riverside Heights, I'd tell them the truth. That standing up to bullies is always worth it, that family and community matter more than anything, and that sometimes the worst experiences teach us the most valuable lessons. The space heater sat in my closet, unused now as Arizona's mild winter required only occasional heating. But I kept it as a reminder, a symbol of where I'd been and how far I'd come. Some people keep medals or trophies. I kept a space heater and the memories of the fight it sparked. And that was enough.